Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a impromptu little stream I decided to throw together because I had a few minutes, and this article stood out to me in relation to several topics I've been covering for the last several years and situations that have come up in the last month or so with the Supreme Court reviewing affirmative action in colleges and my predictions about the ramifications should they decide that affirmative action is unconstitutional. And this particular article was tweeted out in such a way that made me go, something's not right here. So the tweet headline reads as follows: as the Supreme Court weighs whether to ban consideration of race in college admissions, a study says most appeals court judges consider race when hiring clerks. And I thought to myself, oh, so I guess that makes it okay? I wasn't quite sure what the argument was in that tweet. So I thought I'd take a look at the article itself and see what it has to say on the subject. Here's how federal judges think about diversity in hiring law clerks. And speaking of the law, there are several sirens going off in the background right now. Live television. Let me give it a second. There we go. Go away. Go save somebody. Go away. They're still there. Come on. Go away. Okay, now the Doppler effect is taken. All right, goodbye. Okay. Most say they consider race as a factor when hiring, but still struggle to build diverse chambers, a new article says. Oh, okay. So, God. What does it say when the very people who are in charge of enforcing and adjudicating the laws of this country don't care about the laws of this country? Oh, you know, that whole civil rights thing, that whole equal employment opportunity thing, that whole we're not supposed to have race be a part of our considerations when evaluating a person's worth in a position or a job. Yeah, that goes by the wayside. We really need to make diverse chambers. We really need to have the aesthetics meet our moral considerations or something. Oh, okay, well, that supersedes fairness, I guess. As the Supreme Court considered ending the use of race as a factor in college admissions, Justice Elena Kagan suggested the court's decision could have implications beyond higher education and closer to home for the federal judiciary. I hope it has implications beyond higher education. In fact, I think it will inevitably have implications beyond higher education, and I think that's a good thing. But let's see what Elena Kagan has to say. Would it be appropriate for judges, Kagan asked during an argument in October, to consider race when making hiring decisions, especially if the judges think they must do so to build a diverse roster of law clerks? Let's break that down for a second. Is it okay for people to hire people on the basis of their race if they feel compelled to do so in order to have a workforce that looks appropriate? That's what she's asking without actually asking it. Quote, the question is, when race neutral means can't get you there, don't get you there, when you've tried and they still won't get you there, can you go race conscious, unquote? Kagan asked the lawyer challenging Harvard's admissions policy. Quote, I don't believe so, Justice Kagan, the lawyer answered. Well, of course not. If can't get you there, what is the there, Justice Kagan? Is the there an aesthetic? Is the there a mix of the particular race and skin colors that you appreciate over others? Aren't you on the Supreme Court? I mean, I can only hope that Justice Kagan was being the devil's advocate in this instance in challenging the lawyer challenging Harvard's policy to defend their position. I hope she wasn't being like, well, obviously we need to get there, right? Not quite sure. An article published online Wednesday, however, suggests that many of the nation's appeals court judges, one step below the Supreme Court, do think about race and gender in evaluating applicants for highly coveted one-year clerkships in their chambers. Oh, okay, so they're both racist and sexist. Okay. A pair of judges and a law professor interviewed 50 judges from courthouses across the country, providing a rare look at how they approach hiring for jobs that influence judicial opinions and serve as stepping stones to even more prestigious Supreme Court clerkships and posts in government, academia, and private practice. Retired U.S. District Judge Jeremy D. Fogel, unfortunate last name, but anyway, Justice Goodwin Liu of the California Supreme Court and law professor Mary S. Hoops say they were inspired to take on the project because of their concerns about the lack of diversity in the legal profession and among the ranks of federal law clerks, in addition to their own struggles to hire clerks who reflect the diversity of law school students. Maybe you should just focus on hiring law school students. From left, okay, retired U.S. District Judge Jeremy D. Fogel, California Supreme Court. Oh, sorry, that's a subheading to a photo. I apologize. I copied the text here because unfortunately I do have a subscription to Washington Post, but unfortunately they put your username right up on the top corner of articles that you pull up on a browser, and my username would, at least in part, dox me. So I am forced to just take on the text. That's why I do this. Quote, "We know we are not the only ones to experience hiring challenges, yet there seems to be little systemic inquiry into what judges who seek more diversity, however defined, can do to achieve it," unquote. They wrote in the study sponsored by the Berkeley Judicial Institute, where Fogel is executive director. Diversity, however defined. Well, how do you define it? What other meaning could diversity have in this context but skin color or gender, as has already been stated? There's no mystery as to how diversity is defined. If you're putting somewhere in the process of hiring a check on race or a check on gender, then we know exactly what your desired outcome is. It's got nothing to do with the person's ability. But okay. The judges they interviewed are not identified by name in the article to encourage candid conversation, and also probably to avoid massive civil rights lawsuits. Yeah. Many reported difficulty hiring Black and Latino clerks. Those with the most success hiring people of color took steps to broaden their applicant pool and to consider indicators of talent beyond law school rank and grades. Okay, what are other indicators of talent for a law clerk position that don't involve law school rank and grades? Black judges, the study shows, are particularly successful in recruiting and hiring Black clerks. Oh, so they're particularly racist? They made up less than 1/8 of all active appeals court judges at the time of the study, but their courts accounted for more than half of the Black law clerks. It almost seems like there's systemic racism taking place. Quote, "In short, diversity among judges affects diversity among clerks," the authors wrote. That's not a good sign if they meant it to be one. The report includes direct quotes from several Black judges who encourage their colleagues to, quote, "drill deeper," unquote, and broaden their networks to find more diverse candidates, including looking beyond elite law schools. Judges who did not graduate from top-ranked law schools themselves were much more likely to hire law clerks who did not attend a top 20 school, the study found. Okay, interesting. So when I hear all those complaints of people saying part of the problem in the corporate structures these days and organizational structures is people hiring people who look like them and remind themselves of them, that's a problem. Okay, well, here it is happening here. Is this a problem? If it achieves quote unquote diversity, is it okay? Quote, "I don't care where students went to school. You have to do your homework and dig underneath the transcript," one judge said. Quote, "There's no monopoly over brains or qualifications. It's a question of opportunity," unquote. Another Black judge told the authors that he was sending a message by hiring large numbers of talented Black clerks. Now, you see, if you didn't have Black in there as a qualifier, I'd be right on your side. But you do, which means you're discriminating. on the basis of race in the legal profession. Interesting confessions here. Quote, my work gets done. It's high quality. It's on time. Other chambers know who my clerks are. It's not an affirmative action experience. None of that, the judge said. Quote, diversity doesn't mean a diminution in quality. How do you know? If if you're putting up a filter of race before any other consideration in who you're hiring, how do you know the quality wouldn't be better if you just based it on merit? How can you possibly say that? It means you have to be willing to look in non-traditional areas. You have to jump through hoops to justify hiring people on the basis of their race. Okay, maybe one of those hoops should be, I don't know, federal law? Judges have total autonomy to choose their law clerks, and they are essentially their own human resource managers and diversity, equity, and inclusion officers. Huh. Maybe that should be looked into. Many rely on long-standing networks of law professors, former clerks, and law schools for recommendations. Liu, who was a law clerk to Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg after graduating from Yale Law School, said he too often has hired from the same law schools because he has not had the time or context to build new relationships. The article calls for more comprehensive data collection on the demographics of law clerks to spark conversations among judges and help overcome what the authors describe as a, quote, culture of silence, unquote, in which judges rarely discuss their hiring practices so as not to intrude on a colleague's independence and because of competition for the best hires. Oh, maybe also because what they're doing is demonstrably illegal? Maybe, or at least legally questionable at worst. I mean, or I should say at best. Really? Oh, we don't want to intrude on their independence and we don't want to, compete. What? Quote, I'm not sure judges are going to be heavily influenced by external calls for diversity. Are you sure about that? Maybe you should read the rest of this study. What will influence them is conversations with each other, and that's not happening right now, Liu said. Quote, this is a tool to help us understand who is making decisions and who is holding important positions of responsibility, unquote. Is that what this is for? Because it's telling me something completely different. Interviews were conducted during the past 2 years with judges nominated by presidents of both parties, representing nearly 30% of the total active Court of Appeals judges. More Democratic appointees responded to randomly issued invitations than judges picked by Republicans did. Probably because they feel proud of it in a way. Because the authors limited interviews to judges with several years of hiring experience, the most recent nominees of former President Trump were not included. Interesting. The study oversampled minority judges because there are so few on the bench and because of evidence suggesting they had more success hiring minority clerks. Yeah, it's a really difficult task to hire minority clerks if minority is your checkbox in the hiring practice. In general, the judges who were interviewed said they were more willing to intentionally seek out gender balance than racial diversity because they viewed race as a more sensitive topic. Even though race and sex hold equal footing in civil rights law when it comes to determining what you can and cannot hire people on the basis of. Okay, so it's better to be sexist than to be racist. Can you believe that I'm saying this out loud? That this is something that is actually the result of this study and interviews with all these judges? It's safer to be sexist than racist. Okay, but nearly all said they consider race and, quote, assign positive value, unquote, to racial diversity, with some using language strikingly similar to that employed by the universities at the center of the affirmative action college admissions cases before the Supreme Court. This is exactly what I have been talking about. If you listen to the oral arguments put before the Supreme Court on affirmative action, you will hear the exact same talking points as most DEI officers in corporations and organizations, DEI consultants, anybody advocating for diversity, equity, and inclusion grounds their arguments in the same logic as affirmative action. This is why I am so looking forward to the possibility that the Supreme Court could strike down affirmative action and all its justifications as unconstitutional, because in a heartbeat, an entire industry and an entire weird, backwards moral justification for assessing people will become double dog illegal. I cannot wait for that day if it comes, honestly. Race or gender can be a tiebreaker or a plus factor, one judge told the authors, but only if someone meets the qualifications. What, the qualifications don't matter then, do they? If you're going to value race and or gender above the qualifications, then you have 4 people show up with the exact same qualifications, but you know who the better candidate is based on things that have nothing to do with merit. Are you listening to yourself? Quote, my overall goal is 2 women and at least 1 clerk of color, another judge told the authors. Are you kidding me? Only 2 of the judges interviewed said conscious consideration of race is inappropriate, with one telling the authors, quote, I just want the best people. It has 0 to do with their skin color, unquote. Well, I certainly hope you practice what you preach. Because it sure sounds like a lot of these judges have decided to become racists and sexists for the good of all people. In oral arguments for the college admissions case, sorry, real quick tangent. If this is how they evaluate the people that are going to be working under them as law clerks, what is the mindset when they're adjudicating cases? How exactly do they evaluate someone's guilt, innocence, likelihood to reoffend, so on and so forth? I mean, do they do so on the basis of race or gender? Can it not be questioned now if they confess to having used those same elements in assessing other people for qualifications to employment? Doesn't this bring them into question completely if they were to have their names exposed? Good gravy. In oral arguments for the college admissions cases, the Supreme Court's conservative majority seemed to espouse that approach, with several justices likening any consideration of race to segregationist and discriminatory policies of the past. Why wouldn't they? If you're using race to evaluate someone's worth, why wouldn't they? Recent studies show Supreme Court clerks overall are disproportionately white and male. Disproportionate to what? To their ability, to their skill, to their schooling, their education? Disproportionate to the population demographics of the United States? How do you mean disproportionate? In proportion to what? As are the advocates who argue before the High Court. An exception are clerks working for Justice Brett M. Kavanaugh, who previously served on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit and has long made an effort to diversify his chambers. Well, if Brett Kavanaugh is assessing people on the basis of race, he's also doing it wrong. But Brett Kavanaugh is also this evil Republican conservative judge, right? Only 3 of the 20 clerks Kavanaugh has hired at the Supreme Court are white men. All right, so Justice Kavanaugh is a racist and or sexist? Huh. I wonder how he's going to rule on affirmative action. Former law clerks, including California Supreme Court Justice Goodwin Liu, 5th from the left. Oh, sorry, this is another photo thing. I'm kind of like Ron Burgundy. You put the words in front of me, I have to start reading them since I don't have the photo there for context. Excuse me. Beyond race and gender. Yeah, beyond those 2 things, which are very important, most of the judges interviewed said they want ideological diversity among their clerks and do not seek out law clerks whose views match their own. Fine. Diversity of thought. Very good. But that is at least a secondary or tertiary consideration next to race and gender. But applicants tend to self-select according to the interviews and apply to like-minded judges. The report said that self-selection process is concentrated in some instances by separate hiring timelines used by some judges. One Republican nominee said, quote, committed conservatives, unquote, are, quote, already hired and off the market by the time she is hiring. She and most judges in the study reported using a national hiring plan and online application system designed to make the process transparent and uniform, but some said their right-leaning colleagues do not follow it and instead hire future clerks through other networks long before students finish their second year of law school. Okay, well, were you advocating for the independence of judges to make their own hiring decisions, or are you not now? I'm confused. The ideological divide among clerks is hardened, the article says, because Supreme Court justices, quote, almost uniformly, unquote, hire their clerks from the ranks of like-minded appeals court judges, with liberal justices hiring those who work for liberal judges and conservative justices hiring from fellow conservatives. Okay, so again, you're going to surround yourself with like-minded people. That's not the problem. Diversity of thought is not an illegality. All right. Nearly all judges said they aimed to assemble an ensemble of clerks who complemented one another. They emphasized an interest not just in racial and gender diversity, they shouldn't at all, but also in socioeconomic and geographic diversity. Fine, those aren't illegal. Quote, I hope it doesn't sound trite, but I do think our institutions need to look like America, said one Republican appointee, who added that he felt, quote, a little embarrassed, unquote, looking at a photograph of the judges in his circuit because there were so few women. A Democratic appointee told the authors, quote, the cases we deal with come from a society that comes from many different complexions, and I need that in my chambers. I need to have people around me who can help me be mindful of my own blind spots, unquote. Listen to this rationale. Listen to this. Well, obviously, if someone has a particular complexion, they're going to have a particular outlook, a particular experience, a particular knowledge that I just can't possibly possess with my complexion. Are we listening to the same thing here? Am I reading? Is this a real thing that I'm reading? Yes, it is. This cult of rationalized racism and completely glittering sexism goes so far as into our judicial organizations and institutions. I'm not surprised in that sense. I'm just a little bewildered that people would be so blunt about it. I'm always shocked by that. I've mentioned this before. I totally expect couched language, very diplomatic words. I look for people from all sorts of different backgrounds and perspectives. That's what diversity and inclusion really means. Something like that, right? Backgrounds, perspectives, lived experiences, never really getting down to the nitty-gritty of what you actually mean. Well, now they've told us what they actually mean. And with each admission and each rationalization, it just goes to show how bad a problem we have. All right, you think systemic racism is a problem? Well, here it is, on display right now, in opposition to established federal law and flying in the face of, if not spitting in the face of, the civil rights movement and the Civil Rights Act in 1964 and its subsequent revisions. This is so infuriating. And my fingers are crossed to the point of breaking that the Supreme Court outlaws affirmative action and subsequently all of its rationales. Because it will be the best thing that has happened to civil rights since civil rights. Because everybody's been using affirmative action as a sort of passive umbrella to justify themselves in all of these instances. Yes, far beyond higher education. Affirmative action and its arguments have been and are being used in business, in education, and now, obviously, in the judicial system to justify racism, sexism, and God knows what else. All to achieve diversity. Because the window dressing is more important than the quality of the product, I guess. Anyway, everybody, just wanted to read that article really quick, give some commentary. Appreciate you guys coming out. Sorry, no hellos or anything, but just wanted to keep this short. If you'd like to hear more from me, you can find me here Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern for the Sunday Stream, where I'll talk about a thing. Maybe it'll be more on this. Maybe it'll be more on something else. Maybe it'll be on a moron. I don't know yet. You'll have to find out with me. Follow me on Twitter. Leave a like on your way out. And moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. Everybody else, thank you so much for joining me. Hope you have a good rest of your Friday. Hope you have a good weekend. Hope you're all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.